the biggest help that I had, I think, when meeting with Kwan Haeng Sunim during a interview was about trying to find these techniques. So we teach, the sitting part, and if you only come here just for the sitting, then that's all you'll learn. Last week we talked about bowing and, and our 4 great vows. But there's chanting and there's other things here that will help you with some different techniques. So for me, as I'm slowing down my breathing, so in all my research, regardless of what you study, there's always that connection to your breath, and your breath is an anchor, and slowing down your breathing. And there's a lot of science that actually talks about when you slow down your breathing, how it affects your nervous system. So for me, I do a lot of slowing down my breathing, and then doing either mantra or the clear mind, don't know, until it's able to kind of settle. And then some people continue to do that, or once you're settled, I feel like all of my crazy little thoughts here, this glitter that's now settled around me, I can actually look at it differently. When it's swirling all around, there's like so many distractions and so much to think about, but when it's settled and it's just kind of around you, you can look at it in a different way. And so that's how I've been kind of approaching, dealing with either difficult thoughts or difficult things that are going on at work or at home or whatever it might be, or even just little things like when you're aggravated with traffic or you're aggravated in line, and all those little things aggravate us, and then can you catch yourself and just be like, why am I getting aggravated? And bringing that energy down and looking at each little piece of glitter as it kind of comes by, and sometimes those thoughts kind of float by, and then we look at it, it's like, why are we thinking about that? And what's making that jump out? And then to be able to kind of look at it from a different angle. When it's all fluttered around you, it's hard to kind of look at it in a different way. And then either just letting it sail on by. We talk about the clouds, clouds coming and going. We talk about, different situations. For me, that good situation is a bad situation, and bad situations are good situations. Having that kind of viewpoint of that, why do we overreact, or why do I overreact to certain things, and can I look at it in a different way? And so that's why I keep coming back. That's why I hope other people keep coming back, is to be able to practice these different things while we're sitting here, and we can let all of the glitter and all of those thoughts kind of hopefully settle down a little bit. But then to be able to, when I get up, try not to let all of those thoughts and the glitter get too stirred up. But now I know that when it does get to be that point, and the stress or whatever's going on in any of your daily lives, I'm sure we all have our different types of stress, how can I use those techniques to be able to stop and do that off the cushion? So for me, it's been, as I'm walking to the restroom, can I slow down my breathing and maybe do a mantra? As in between meetings, can I sit and breathe for a few minutes? Or especially during a meeting, right? Or that stressful time, that's really the hardest part, because we get caught up in all of those distractions. So how can I, in the middle of a stressful situation, notice how my body's reacting to it, notice how my breathing's reacting to it. Usually, we start breathing up high in our chest. So how can I bring that down, slow down my breathing, and just look at the situation just as it is right now, and then finding that way of how can I help the people in the room with me, how can I help myself, and then what is the best route to move forward, and trying not to get caught up in the drama, in the situation that we have, and just keep coming back to this present moment. Because at the end of the day, that's all we have is the right now, and how do we use this practice to keep coming back to that? And so for me, the different forms have helped, and certainly the sitting, but if you're coming to just sit and think that that's going to solve all of our problems, probably isn't going to work. And so I encourage everyone to continue to learn more. So our new folks here, even if it seems different or odd, especially with the robes and that type of thing, I encourage you to explore and find which forms really work for you, and how those different strategies can help you off the cushion. And that's what we're going to try to do as we continue on with the Dharma School, is teach our youngest folks those strategies, just really learning to be aware of your body and your mind and the situation around you, and taking that minute to take a pause, take a breath, and then look at it in a different way and try to find a way to come back to our how can we help. So that's why I keep coming back. I hope that's why many of you come back. And if you're new, I hope that you all do come back as well and continue to explore that with us. So thank you.
Thank you, I enjoyed that.
Turn this over to you. And you can keep your snow globe.
Oh,
That's
okay, good. I'll look at it every once in a while.
So when your mind gets all shuffled. We all do.
Nobody, you don't see my mind, which I'm glad. But.
Yeah, I'm glad you don't see mine either.
So I enjoyed what Lisa was saying, and especially the part about learning the techniques of practice. So I've had many cases of people come and ask me questions about Buddhism and questions about their problems, like especially about anger and stuff like that. And I would talk to them about it, but I found that those people who actually came and listened to the Dharma talk and then would do sitting and then listen to the Dharma talk and do sitting, those people learned how to take care of their emotions. Usually it was often had to do with some kind of emotions or stuff that was they couldn't deal with. And they couldn't deal with it because they didn't understand their mind. So I could understand, other people could understand, they didn't understand. So that's the point. They have to, you have to understand. So in order for you to do that, you need to come here. I'm not saying you need to come here, but this is one of the techniques that you can use, is to come here and to listen and to practice. There are other ways to do it also. So, what is that?
I said, and online.
Oh, and online, yeah, sure. And then also see it online. So I thought also today that I'd like to talk about the four great vows as it was touched on last week. And it is an issue is that, let me just go through them. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. I vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. I vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. I vow to attain it. So that sounds like a lot of impossible things to do. And yes, I used to think about that. But actually, Zen Master Seung sat down and looked at these years ago. This is where I heard this talk that I'm going to be talking about. And he spoke on them. And so it's sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. So that's our direction. The reason why we practice Buddhism is to understand ourselves and to help others. And as we help others, we begin to see that this self has no self-nature, meaning that there's nothing you can hang your hat up on and say that that's who I am, this unchangeable thing. There's nothing there that you can do that. So it has no self-nature. And so, with that, then, sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them all. That's our direction. And so it's a very interesting thing is Zen Master Tong Do Sa, believe it or not, he's sitting there in the back. He also talked about the four great vows one time. And he said something that I always remember, and I thought was really good, is that if you go to Children's Hospital in Boston, it says, until all the children are healed. It's the same thing, the same point. It's the direction. So you can't take it literally. In fact, a lot of this stuff you can't take literal. And why is that? Because they pack a whole lot of teaching into just a few words. And so you get up in the morning and you affirm your direction and your purpose. Okay, that's what this is for. But if you were to get up in the morning and explain all the stuff, explain all the sutras, you'd be there for the whole morning. So that's a little bit about how that is. So sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. That means that when you're with your wife or your husband, how can I help my wife? How can I help my husband? And when you're with your child, how can I help my son, my daughter? It's not what can my daughter do to make me look good. It's how can I help my son or daughter? And How can I help the air? How can I help the sea, the river, the environment? I mean, people think that this world belongs to human beings. It's ours. We can do what we want. Well, look at what we did. Look at what we did. This world belongs to all sentient beings. All sentient beings. All sentient beings need to be honored and welcomed and taken care of, especially we're the ones that are walking around with the brains, right? Supposedly. So I don't want to get at that. So that's a little bit about how that is. So sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. That's our direction. Okay. Delusions are endless. I vow to cut through them all. Originally, this universe was empty, and then something appeared. That's delusion. If we cut our attachment to that, then life can actually be kind of a paradise. And so that's a bit of a problem with this world, is that we all think that we got to die and go to Hawaii or something like that. So it's not going to happen now. It's going to happen when we die. That's a problem. But but it's not true, actually. So the Bible says that the kingdom of heaven is inside. And the Buddhist teaching about that is that the Tathagata, which is the teacher, lives in the land of bliss, even while he's in his body. Same thing. And you can find that with all the other practices and religions, that actually, that if you, it's how you keep your mind can then make your life a heck of a lot easier. So we can't control our environment. We can control how we act to it. Okay, so that's a kind of important point. So delusions are endless. I vow to cut through them all, but that's all. Still, that says, then how do we do the practical side of that? There's a practical side, and the practical side is that, for instance, the Avatam Sukha. So I do suggest that once in a while we look at some sutras, some readings of Buddhism, because then it helps. But it doesn't do a lot of good for you just to read. You got to do some reading and practicing. And it helps if you're in an environment like this where you can also get teaching and stuff like that. Where for instance, I've been practicing for a while, so I know some points I can hit that might be helpful for you. So the Avatam Sutra, there's 4 lines, and it says, if you wish to thoroughly understand all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future, then you should view the nature of the whole universe as being created by the mind alone. So if you look at that and you look at this question, delusions are endless, I vow to cut through them all. What that's saying is that when you're sitting, just come back to this moment. Anything that appears in your mind, you don't attach to it. Of course, like I say, I like cake and ice cream. There's cake and ice cream down and downstairs. I could leave you guys and go get my cake and ice cream. But instead, what I do is I come back to what I'm doing, which is breathe in, clear mind, breathe out, don't know. Or if you're with your friend, instead of going to get your cake and ice cream, leaving your friend driving the cars like that, you are with your friend. You're just there in that moment. So it's about coming back to this moment and not attaching to that thing. The extreme of that, of course, is if somebody walks into a school and starts shooting. They're attached to that anger. Okay? So delusions are endless. I vow to cut through them all. So when sitting, what you do is you simply come back to this moment and you cut the attachment to that thinking. So that's not to say that you can't think, or the thinking is useless, or that the thinking is not true. It says don't attach to it. So that when you start talking about this point of view, this political point of view with somebody, you're able to see their point of view. Why? Because you're not so attached to your point of view. So your mind is open, okay? So that's how you were working with the delusions that endless. We vow to cut through them all. And then the Buddha way is inconceivable. I vow to attain it. I vow to attain it. So every moment is an opportunity to learn. I remember, I had some issues with my thinking years and years ago, and I would sit at home and I would plan my way to work, and then I'd plan my way back. Do you think there's ever one time the way that I planned my way to work and the way that it and back ever worked? It never worked. I guarantee you. Something always different would happen. Either a car came this way or a person said that or this. Never, never, ever was it ever the same. Every moment's a chance to learn. Every moment you come across new things. This is not about learning the 84,000 volumes of the Buddhist canon at Haeng Sa. You can do that if you like. Of course, you got to learn Chinese first. Okay, and those are great sutras. The Avatamsaka is in that thing. But you got to understand that these are all like, you got to understand how to look at them, how to read them. That's why with Zen Master Seung Sahn, he always had us meditating first before we started reading sutras and stuff like that, because then we don't get attached to the stuff that we're reading. This Zen Master said that, or that Zen Master said this. What is it right in front of you? What are you doing right now? That's the point. And so that's the teachings are infinite. I vow to learn them all. Just pay attention to moment. The Buddha way is inconceivable. I vow to attain it. That means the Buddha way is you can't conceive it. It's beyond concepts. You can't intellectualize it. Okay, that's don't know. Don't know. Before thinking mind, don't know. So that's all. What does that say? That's also just basically saying keep an open mind. Don't make a decision about something before there's something appears. I'm gonna keep an open mind. If you can keep an open mind, then you can help others a lot more and yourself. So, and there is a saying in the Diamond Sutra: don't attach to the thoughts which arise in your mind. And so if you look at sutras and stuff like that, you look at the koans, you'll see that this theme that I'm talking about, this not attaching to your thinking, to helping all sentient beings, cutting off your delusions, and keeping a mind that is open, is they hit on it in all parts of Buddhism, Theravada, Mahayana, Zen, and all of them hit on these parts. And I would go so far to say is that if you look in other religions, they're doing the same thing. So what I tell people is that if you come here and you attain this before thinking mind, this don't know mind, you can go to any religious practice, any the spiritual practice like the native Indians, the native South Americans, and so forth, the native Africans, and you can find just where they hit this spiritual part. Because this spiritual part that all human beings doesn't differ from one human being to another, or one ethnicity to another. That's a crazy thought. Okay, it's all the same. It's just that we have different techniques to look at it. And so I'll never say that you have to use our technique to look at your spiritual self when there's so many others out there. So that's a little bit about. And somebody have a question? Or? Go ahead.
So, I see the book. And Lisa mentioned a number of our practices, and of course there's koans on top of that. I've heard Bobby mention this, and I've heard others in the masters mention how wonderful the practices. And they speak about it in such a loving, like caring, blissful way. That's not my experience. Am I alone in that? Am I the only one that doesn't see it as a loving, blissful, wonderful gift?
Somehow I doubt it.
So can you maybe speak to the struggle there?
Yeah, I guess I could. In the sense that I think that I still see you as not having, as still kind of a beginning person. I mean, that you haven't really got into practicing it as deep as you could. So there's this. Let us just call it a solid piece of ice that without practicing, it melts slowly and slowly. So when you first come, and if you put a fire to ice, you'll see that it melts very quickly, just in the first moment or two. And then it begins to take longer as the fire continues on it. So that's a little bit about how that is. I've been practicing for some years, and there is a point where when I come into the Dharma room and sit, if I sit a certain amount of time, things drop away. That's all that happens. There's no other way to say it. And when I say things drop away, is that what happens is that my thinking pauses. It just pauses, okay? Because I'm used to it. So it pauses. In that pause, okay, that's when you begin to digest your experiences and stuff like that. You're not constantly churning it around. It's just like what she's saying with this here. That's exactly what happens. So if I sit 25 minutes or more in the Dharma room, almost guaranteed that happens. So whatever happened during the day, okay, whatever happened during the day, becomes lighter. Does it mean my problems go away? No, but they become lighter. I'm able to look at them a little bit differently. And so that's a place that people have been practicing for some time, they get to that point. And if they don't, and they're still having problems sitting, then maybe they should choose something else. It's kind of like what I say is that when you, first when you start out practicing, a lot of people do is they read books, Thich Nhat Hanh, Zen Master Seung Sahn, all of these different teachers. Go ahead and read these books. Then while you're reading these books, there's some of them you're going to feel fairly familiar with. Okay, then try it. Go to that practicing place and try it, okay? And then the one that works for you, then do it. And when you do it, give it like 5 years. But you're not saying it doesn't go exactly like that. I mean, you got to try a few, go around. I certainly did. I read many different books. It's a wonder. I didn't know that I was going to wind up in Korean Zen because there was no Korean Zen when I was looking for a school, but it just happened, and then I met Zen Master Seung Sahn. That was the end of that. A very good teachers when I ran into. But then what you do is you find the teaching that you like, and then you've got to settle into that teacher. And I say give it a good solid 5 years. Okay? At the end of the 5 years, if it doesn't do anything for you, leave. Go somewhere else. Find something else. It's not working. But Dave and I know each other, and I know he does Bodhisattva questions. And also, he's told me a number of times of how practicing has worked for him, so I'm not so worried about Dave. And so that's a kind of little bit about how you come on to practice. And so, like I said, this is not the only way, but I can tell you there are ways out there that can help everybody giving their situations. Now, I'm thinking about this is that, life can be bliss. So kind of what that's saying is that it's how you keep your mind. So in a real sense, everybody talks about nirvana, they talk about samsara, they talk about the hell realms, and they talk about all of that. All of that is here present in this moment. It's how you keep your mind. So in an absolute sense, Zen says that nirvana is here, and now nirvana and samsara are one and the same. In that sense, they're in the same place. That's a kind of interesting point. Go ahead.
I must to really follow up with David was saying. Someone approached me about 2 weeks ago and wanted to meet with me and talk about what's going on with them in their lives. And one of the questions that I asked this person is, because the person who comes here says, do you practice consistently? And consistently, I think to me means daily. And for me, it means what I do is I sit on the question every day. And I try to make it at the same time every day. And once I started doing that, because in the beginning sitting, even if I'm sitting for 25 minutes,
Constant chat.
yeah, the sprinkles, whatever it is. I always talk about it as like a muddy glass of water, and it's just muddy, muddy, muddy. and then you set it down, and eventually the mud settles and the water becomes clear. I like the sprinkles, with glitter better, I think that's cool. But anyways, I found for me that didn't happen in the beginning, and I wasn't practicing consistently. I would, just come middle of the week, and I'd come on the weekend, and that was the only time I practiced. But once I started doing daily practice, I found that glitter did settle. So I just, I'm not a JDPS or a Zen Master, and this person approached me for a teaching moment, and that's how I answered the person. Would you say that was a good way to answer it? To
Sure.
say, just try, keep on doing your practice consistently.
Sure, I would say that, but you do have to understand that when we sit, what we're doing is that we're are experiencing our experiences, okay? So that means that you have stuff in your past, you have trauma and all of this kind of stuff in your past, that's going to appear. There's no magic bullet to take that away. But what we do is we just sit, okay, and let it appear and let it disappear. As it appears and disappears, that trauma, whatever it is, has less of a hold on you, okay? But so, yeah, if you, that's how that works. So if that trauma is great, sometimes sitting is not the best thing. More of a work practice or chanting or bowing is more of a better way to deal with that. Just sitting there and all of that isn't good, because I've gone to some prisons and done some teaching, not as much as many people, but in some of the places, or at least what I heard about women, is that when they go to a women's prison, they can't have the women sitting there. They have too much trauma. So then what they do is they talk about sitting there and feeling your feet and feeling how your hands touch the chair and your legs, your feet touching the ground. I feel about how your body is there, but you don't sit there and look inside and have all that stuff appear, because it can be quite daunting. And so that's how you start. So sometimes when you come here and you have stuff coming up, a good way to do that is not to sit there with all of that, but what you can do is you can do a work practice. Work practice could be just hanging out downstairs, washing dishes, hanging out around with the other Sangha members and doing stuff. And in that sense, you're not 100% with what's on your mind with that trauma, but believe it or not, that trauma is there. Okay, it's there. So as you're working, that trauma is there, and it's kind of working itself out. You're not pushing it down, and you're not sitting there in it, okay? But what you're doing is you're just kind of working. And you're doing a job, you're with these people, you're doing this and that stuff there is beginning to loosen up in the back of the mind. So that's kind of like how that works. And I've seen people sit down and then it's just too much. We have to tell them to get off the seat and do something. And so we have bowing, we have chanting, I have together action, and so you have to look at that what we do is we got these pressures that appear inside. And so these pressures is that we have a pressure valve. And so this pressure valve, we can open it up and let off that steam. You heard that before, let off that steam. But if the steam, the pressure is greater than what that valve could handle, then you've got to let it settle down some other way. Okay? So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then, anybody have something else, or you want me to just run into something?
Please use the microphone.
If you're in the back.
They're asking a lot, they can't hear the question. Thank you.
So I have a bit of a personal question, and it's a bit long, but I struggle with balancing feminism and Buddhism at the same time. So I consider myself a Buddhist, and I've been raised a Buddhist, I think, but I'm also very into feminism. And I think the thing is that even though Buddhism and feminism, they advocate for the same thing, kind of just the idea of like liberation of all, but they go about it in completely different ways. So I think with Buddhism, it's about accepting, being in the present and being like this, right? But I think with feminism, it's more just like, it's this constant, like, you have to advocate for all of this. There's a lot of issues, you have to do all of this. And I think that the reason why I'm struggling with this is that I don't think I've ever seen anyone within like the Buddhist community or the feminist community talk about any of it, because I think that there's this like...
When you say talk about any of it, what are the people in the feminist community and the people in the Buddhist community, what are they not talking about?
I think that, one, it's that the system, patriarchy is like a global system, and I think that Buddhism still kind of exists under that, in the sense that when I got into it, or just like in any traditions, like let's say like women are kind of seen like the evil like apple in like Adam and Eve, right, in the sense, or there's still a lot of issues. And I think that the reason why a lot of feminists try to not like get into it is because they believe that like religions like Buddhism are essentialist, in the sense that like, because it's a group and they're not trying to like care about these issues, like they know that these issues...
Can I just say one thing that might help to answer some of your questions? And you can tell me if it does or not. I can tell you that a lot of ways, the way formal Buddhism, that means like Mahayana, Zen, and Korean Buddhism, Indian Buddhism, all the religions, all the political systems, in fact, all of it. Well, okay, let's just say here with Zen, because I know Zen, all right? Any way that they're, in Zen, there is no man, there is no woman, and so what that says is that we're completely equal. When you come into Buddhism, you find that that's not the case. That's cultural. It doesn't have to do with Buddhism. That's cultural. And so what we teach here is we teach people to understand themselves and to help others. Now, if you got 10 people and they all practice, from that understanding, they're going to help in different ways. If you come here and you practice and you feel that feminism is how you can help, do it.
I think that was a really good answer. Thank you. I mean, I think I read something similar. I was reading this book called The Buddhist and the Ethicist, and basically it's written by Peter Singer, who is a philosopher, and he asked this female Buddhist monk, and he asked her, do you believe in women's rights? And she's like, I don't believe in women's rights particularly, but she believes in human rights. Do you think that to you it's more about like rights in general? But I think that I agree with what you're saying, but I think for me it's more just like making that distinction that believing in women's rights is important to me, because I think that women have been a marginalized community for all of history, and I think that if you when you only say humans' rights, I feel like that's kind of in a way silencing.
I know, I can see what you're saying, because as in America we have slavery in the past, and now we don't. But then people say, "Oh, you're all equal," but there's a lot of inequality in that the money that was generated by those slaves is what generates a lot of the corporations nowadays, how they got big. Wall Street was built by slaves, so forth and so on. The same thing has happened, I guess I would say, with women in the sense that you're saying there's a past there. And because of that past, I think that there's a way that we can look at that and as what you're saying. I mean, I think that's fine. So in a basic sense, no, there's no difference. We're all human beings, but you can't do that when you start talking, for instance, about the Palestinians. That doesn't make sense.
Thank you for your answer. I really appreciate it, but yeah, thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. I guess I thought he was going to come up and say something.
I just read time.
Yeah.
So thank you both for your wonderful talks today, and thank all of you for your questions. A couple of announcements to go ahead and wind us down. First of all, after we finish up here with the announcements, Gary, one of our Dharma teachers, will be around in the Dharma room to teach anyone who wants to learn how to do Chugpi or Mock Talk, to an instruction on how to do that. So if you're interested, please stick around, and Gary will attend to you. Other announcements, first of all, it is summer, so we have our organic farmers market going on. This is going to be running July through October, and that's going to be here every Sunday after our Sunday Dharma program. You're not going to miss it. It's the big stand right outside with all the vegetables in front of it. Please stop by, pick up some vegetables for yourself. They're all grown right here at the Zen Center by our garden master, So-Young Lee, all grown organically and are very delicious and tasty. So please, consider picking up some vegetables for yourself. It helps support us at the Zen Center, and it helps nourishes you and your practice. Speaking of plants, on Saturday, July 27th, we are going to have an invasive species removal day. So we're going to have a little Sangha work day. Kwan Haeng Sunim spoke about how sometimes it's good to do work practice with things that are on the minds, and this is a good opportunity to come and do so. So this will be here at the Zen Center, Saturday, July 27th, 9:30 to 12, and we'll also provide you with a vegetarian lunch as we go around and remove some species that made a nice little home here and they really should not have. That following Sunday, July 28th, is going to be the 45th anniversary celebration of the Providence Zen Center. So 45 long, wonderful years, and so we're going to do this celebration after our 9:30 meditation practice here. So at 10:45, we're going to have some anniversary celebration talks, and then afterwards we're going to have an anniversary celebration lunch. So all of you are invited to come celebrate the anniversary here of the Providence Zen Center. Yes?
There's some announcement there on the web of social media, so people have to let us know that you're staying for lunch, so we can have it accordingly.
Please send us an email.
Make sure you get food.
Yep. So the instructions I just have are RSVP not required. So talk to whoever made this. Welcome to our management team meetings, everyone. And then finally, we're going to have our Founders Day Sangha weekend. This is going to be at the end of our summer Kyolche, so this will be across 2 days, Saturday, August 3rd, and Sunday, August 4th. And so we're going to have a Founders Day celebration. There is going to be meals, cake, as well as a precept ceremony Sunday, August 4th. So if you have an interest in taking precepts, come speak to someone in robes, preferably Kwan Haeng Sunim, but I know he has to go out to Kyolche, and we'll be able to kind of talk to you a little bit about that if it's of interest to you. And with all of that being said, practice is always free, these events and electricity and streaming is not, so if you would like to help support us, we first very gratefully accept donations. You can do so online at providencezen.org or here in person near our donation box. They go towards keeping this place open so everyone can access this teaching free of charge, and help offset the $7,000 bill that we just spent repairing the main water line so that we can have running water. So please donate generously. But in addition to donations, we also very gratefully accept volunteers here. Currently, we're looking for volunteers to help us with the anniversary lunch and also on the Founders Day celebration. If you're interested, you can just email us at volunteer@providencezen.org. Little brochure is out front. So thank you all again so much for coming, and we'll see. And we have a gift shop which is open. Thank you all again. Yes. Front of the kitchen. Just gonna stay. Yep. Yeah, the rest can stay. Thanks.
Make a sign.
Right on that.
Close the board. I'll do it every time.
No, I was simply relieved. But
This is the first time you do it, it's the hardest.
It gets easier, yeah.
all right. Have a good day.
I'm a second.
No, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go look at it. My husband's waiting for me, we're driving somewhere in Massachusetts. Yeah, so I will see you later.
It wasn't a mistake. I showed up somewhere. No, it was, but, yeah, too hot, it didn't